It is such a pleasure to be here in so many ways, and as Saul's talking, I'm thinking about the old Lao Tzu quote about the spokes, and it's not the spokes, but it is the hub, and that's what this is all about. You're going to hear lots of little pieces from a number of people who have lived a life, I guess, where Bob Dylan would say, he who is not busy being born must be busy dying, and none of the people you're going to hear are busy dying. They're busy being born again and again and again in terms of what we do. So it will be the gestalt. It'll be all the different pieces. So you might think, geez, how do I relate to that? And how do I relate to that? And pretty soon you're going to turn around and it's going to begin to click that, wait a minute, it isn't their context, it's my context. And all the different pieces begin to fit. So you're not going to hear any great wisdom. The great wisdom is going to come at the end of the 2 days when you start to synthesize, but then in particular 6 months from now, when it really begins to build and you start sharing your stories with others. So let me go back. There was a dinner last night for storytellers. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there. Well, fortunately, I couldn't be there. I was asked to address 200 breast cancer survivors at the Crown Plaza here in Rhode Island. By the way, Rhode Island's a great place. It's the only place I know where you can wake up late, not know you're going, and arrive 20 minutes early. That's a pretty neat place for innovation, which is why Saul 7 years ago when he said, I have this idea, and thinking, what a perfect place right here because it's the usual suspects. So we always have them. So it took me back to when I did my first talk here 5 years ago. I'm going to give you that fast story and then show you how it leads to the next story and a couple of lessons I've learned along the way in this process. And there's a lot of lessons. Okay, so let's go back 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I walked into my accountant's office. I just finished writing a book. I just finished running a 10K, feeling pretty good. I saw my accountant, a friend of mine for 25 years. He looked a little peaked, and I said, are you okay? And he said, well, no, not really. And in my second round of chemotherapy, my response was, how do we allow so much time to go by and we have friends who are sick, and no, not just sick, but clearly he had cancer. And he saw the puzzled look on my face and he said, yeah, I had a radical mastectomy back in January. Well, you know, sometimes you hear something but you don't think you've heard it, because not only sick, cancer, but I think this guy just told me that he had breast cancer. I've been in the field of health for over 30 years, from Brussels to Boston, talking about the importance of primary responsibility around detection, intervention, and early involvement on the part of the individual. So he saw the perplexity in my face and he said, yeah, surprised me as well. I gave him a hug. I said, I'll say a prayer for you. I walked out of his office thinking about this, a man with breast cancer, walked down the hall, down the stairs, onto Main Street in Ann Arbor, walking to my car. For the first time in my life, I did a self-breast exam. By the way, if you've ever been to Ann Arbor, you know you can do anything on Main Street, so this is... Who's paying attention to a guy doing a breast exam? But I stopped because right behind the right nipple, hard as a rock, like a half a marble or a BB, there is something there. It doesn't hurt, but clearly something there. I think to myself, what are the odds? I mean, I didn't even know about this 20 minutes ago, but I've got to do something about it because I actually wrote the book about the importance of doing something about this. I called my primary care doc, known him for a number of years since he was in medical school, told him, he said, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. I'm sure it's just a cyst, but if you'd like, come on in. Most guys I know, I'm in my 60s, at this point, would have just kind of walked away when that radar came on. I couldn't do it, so I went in, couldn't see him. I saw a female physician. I thought even better, more familiar with the touch, more sent, I don't know. I saw her, she says, oh, Michael, I haven't never dealt, I wouldn't worry, I'm sure it's a cyst, I wouldn't worry. If you'd like, here's a referral to a general surgeon. Okay, again, I'm a guy, twice now docs have said, don't worry about it. What would most men do? You're going to toss this thing. We don't want to talk about it. We don't like to think we have breasts. We have pecs. We don't have breasts. But again, I think chapter 3 of a book I wrote said, I can't ignore this. So I went again to the general surgeon, sitting in a waiting room with all of my sisters, feeling a little uncomfortable. Finally, he comes out, what is it? And I tell him, I wouldn't worry about it. Let's see. I'm sure it's just a cyst. What would you like to do? Okay, I think this is the theme, folks. What do you want to do? With all the information that you're presented with, what do you want to do? In my case, I said, well, what are my choices? He said, well, we can always do a mammogram. No, no, we can't. I'm a guy, besides that, my wife Hillary, she has that. She says that hurts. I'm not going to, I don't want to do that. What's the next option, please? We can take it out. Would you like a Valium cocktail? No, let's just do this. I'm very curious at the process. I remember very clearly it was the last appointment, Memorial Day weekend, 1999. Laugh, 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 talk, talk, talk. Who's got the basis for tomorrow's softball game? Because you can't have a softball game without. Who's got the chicken? Remember last year you had to have chicken, and it was so all the banter that happens in a clinic at the end of the day before a holiday, interspersed with don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. Finally, all the chatter stopped. They cut into me, and then all I heard for 45 minutes was the sound of surgical instruments. They went to suture to close, the bleeding wouldn't stop, they had to open me back up again. They went to suture to close, the bleeding wouldn't stop, they had to open me back up again. Finally, they had to cauterize. And keep in mind, I am fully conscious during this process. And then I remember Manny Marcus very clearly. He leans over with the goggles and says, Michael, I don't know what this is. I don't think it's cancer. Well, at that moment, every fiber in my body knew exactly what was going on, but it was a long 4 days. The path lab was closed. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 2nd of June, the phone rings, Dr. Marcus, Michael, no good news. No good news. We've all heard that in some fashion. It's that moment where everything stops and words seem to echo as if in a hollow tube someplace. And I said, I'm sorry, what? And he said, you have cancer. Of bigger concern, you have a grade 3 tumor. We need you in immediately for a radical mastectomy. Okay, now think about this for a second. First of all, the odds of my being here with you today are so slim. If I had not gone in on that day, if that individual had not shared the information, if I had not taken hubris and male ego and put it aside, by the way, men die much more from embarrassment than they die from pathology, I wouldn't be here. So that whole process, you don't have to be overly spiritual to recognize maybe something else was going on. So then you're given opportunities. So, stranger in a strange land, fish out of water. Oh, yes, indeed. What a journey to follow in that process. The second fish out of water, or second stranger in a strange land, is I was asked by an insurance company to come and create an institute for prevention. Purely prevention. When I first walked into the doors talking about wellness and talking about prevention 7 years ago, I was met with the strangest look. This guy seems like a nice guy. Seems like he's intelligent. What the hell is he talking about? Prevention. Healthcare is not about prevention. Healthcare is a $2.8 trillion industry that's all about treatment. What is this fluffy California Lycra sprouts and water bottle stuff doing inside business? Well, how'd that work out? We see today the importance of being able to have this kind of chutzpah, to be able to say, I don't think it's working right. To be able to say, I don't care about the embarrassment, I don't care about the awkwardness, I don't care about the fact that everybody else is swimming in one direction. It's all wrong. We're all kind of taking this journey together. So I'm going to share very fast in the next 3 minutes that I have with you lessons learned from mountain. By the way, I went off to climb 5 mountains throughout the world. I wrote 4 additional books along the way. In part because I was 51 years of age when I was diagnosed with cancer, and I'd hit the twos in life, your second group of twos, too fat, too old, too tired, too poor. And then somebody says you have fill in the blank, and you realize that life is what? Yeah, it's too short, so I don't want people to talk about what they can't do in life. So I went off to climb a bunch of mountains to get involved. And then the lessons along the way, keep in mind the fact that when you are an innovator, you are deeply indebted to the Joseph Campbells of the world, because you are on a journey. And you have got shapeshifters out there, and you have got guardians who don't want you to move forward with what you're doing. So you have to have perseverance, and most of all, you have to have mentors, and you have to have guides. You have to let the hubris go. You have to ask the stupid questions. Don't ask stupid questions. Ask all the stupid questions. You have to be able to sit back and say, all of those people who tell you, be realistic, I'm telling you, do not be realistic. Do not be practical. I remember I went to my doc the first time I wanted to go back and do some technical climbing because I was trained years and years ago. And Bob Brakey looked at me and he said, Michael, let's see now, you're not 20 anymore, you're not 30 anymore, you're not 40 anymore. I said, okay, I got the point. Are you telling me I can't go? In fact, this was to go to Mount Everest, because I went to Alaska, got recertified in technical training, then went off to Everest, and then 2 years ago I went off to Kilimanjaro. And Bob is sitting there and saying, be practical. Be realistic. You haven't even adjusted to tamoxifen. By the way, that's a great drug. Tamoxifen is fine, of course, at 30,000 women clinical trials and me. And if you're not in menopause as a woman, it gives you menopause-like symptoms. So I had the men in menopause. I had the hot flashes and night sweats. My wife thought this was great because we shared menopause. How many couples get to share a menopause? We'd be someplace and she'd say, is it hot in here? I'd say, I'm freezing in my sweat. I was hot, but in fact, she thinks every guy should go on tamoxifen for at least 6 months just to get the feel. So my doc is telling me to be practical. And I said, are you telling me I can't? Are you telling me this is impossible? He said, no, no, no. It is highly improbable. Oh, wait a second, folks. There's a huge difference. One deals with physics, and the other deals with spirit. If it's not possible, it's not possible. That's physics. If there is a small nano opportunity in terms of probability, that's mine. I own that. That's probability that belongs in the spirit. It belongs in the community. So don't let people tell you what they can't do. And the next time somebody says, be realistic and be practical, just smile knowingly. As you go off and continue to live a life of healthy uncertainty. By the way, there ain't nothing that's certain. I'm a guy with breast cancer. Trust me, there is nothing that's certain. So the issue is, how are you going to live until those moments come up? It's going to be one of solid health in terms of everything you can possibly do from an emotional standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, intellectual standpoint, and gather smart people around you. That's what these 2 days are all about. Listening, synthesizing, and then going back, creating and sharing your own stories. And I thank you very much.